Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I know some of you guys didn't get to be a part of the live yesterday, and I apologize for that. Yesterday, I was off all day, and I had too much time on my hands, and my hands were idle, and I was really just excited. I wanted to get through those two chapters because I understand how a lot of people will latch on to chapter 13 and get lost in it. And I don't want anyone to get lost in any of this. All right. That said, let me welcome everyone. We have Spirit and Truth, Wendy. We have Spirit Church Ministry. And we have Jenny Murphy, Tartarian Prepper, in the house this evening. It's good to see you guys. I'm glad you guys are here, or gals, ladies, as we could say ladies now, I think. Jenny Murphy says, good to see you too, Rev. My stomach is feels a little better, but I still weak and aching, but still weak and aching. All right. Well, I'm gonna continue to pray for you as well as the fella, I can't remember his name. Yesterday, one of the fellas came in the chat and asked us to pray for him. He has some stuff going on as well, in it with his health. So I will gladly say a prayer for anyone that needs it, wants it, or as it requests it. Good evening, Ain't Buying It. Glad to see you here. Ruthless Savage is in the house. Awesome. And Wendy had said that my intro was dope. I appreciate that. I really did put a little work into it, so I hope that it inspires some type of intrigue. You guys are amazing and awesome in this community. I want to say that. I just want to go ahead and say that and throw that out there. I see you guys in other people's other YouTube channels, chats, and in their comments, and you guys are always encouraging. You guys are always helpful, and you guys are always on top of your game when it comes to defending the truth. And that's what I really love this community for that reason, because I no longer feel like I'm alone in this world necessarily, or in this battle that we're fighting against good and evil. I feel like I have a community, a family that I think I've always been looking for, and that's you guys. Good evening, Pepe. I see you joined us as well. That said, I wanted to go over chapter 14 and hopefully try to get to chapter 16 through this, because 15 is pretty short. If you weren't here with me last night and haven't had a chance to catch up on that episode yet, we went over chapters 12 and 13, and I'll do a small recap on basically what we kind of went over. Before I lose this thought, someone had pointed out in the comments that when Jesus went to hell or died, he went to hell and then was able to preach to the people down in hell. And that's written in the Lost Gospel, or the Gospel of Nicodemus. And it talks about Moses and Elijah being the two witnesses. It names them as the two witnesses. So a lot of people will research and study and look for the truth in things, and they'll find that answer, or they'll find that book and they'll read that and they'll go, oh, well, now they know who the witnesses are. the question that I always had was, if it's in the book of Nicodemus, why wouldn't it be in the Bible? And the answer really is pretty simple. Yeah, actually, yeah, I think you might be right. I ain't buying it. Elijah and Enoch. The point that I wanted to get to with that was that the more and more I've read this book and studied through it, the more I realize what's important and what's not important. And that's not to say that all of it's not important. It's all important. But what I mean is what's important to me. Like what applies to me. And when we are reading this thing and as we go through it, we'll see things that we recognize, like events, even like if it was talking about a whole city burning or something to that effect, you could compare that to what's going on in California. But that doesn't necessarily mean that what you're reading is talking about what's going on in California in present day. It's not always, it doesn't always apply to you. And sometimes people will read this and they'll go, "Oh, well, this is all metaphor since I can't really explain it in current days fashion." So the point that I'm I guess that I'm trying to reach with this entire thing is that as I've read this thing, like most everyone else who's also read this thing, I've had to read it multiple times. And every time I read it, it's obviously, everyone says it, you learn something new. Well, I didn't want to necessarily learn something new. I just want to understand it and I want to know what it's saying. Simple as that. I got to a point in my life, I guess, where I was just tired of trying to figure things out. Who's telling me right? Which pastor should I listen to? Which doctrine should I follow? And so finally, when I removed myself from all of that and I started doing what we're doing here, is reading this thing line by line and precept upon precept, it started to reveal to me a totally different truth than any of that other ways that I had read it before. And what we ended up starting with yesterday is I opened up with the book of Jasher. And the only part of Jasher I went over was chapter 8, where it talks about the birth of Abraham. And in the birth of Abraham, they seen these stars in the sky, these signs. And well, before I go into that next point, I'll go ahead and finish with this point. So they saw the signs, they saw the stars, and they knew what they meant. They knew it was from God, and they understood it well enough to believe in it, and to even condemn themselves to Nimrod if that's what it took, just so that everybody understood that they knew what that meant. And then I thought about, in today's time, if stuff like that happens, who do you trust? How do you know who's telling you right whenever they see a sign in the sky? Does it mean the same thing to you as it means to me and to everyone else? How does that apply to us, and how do you figure out what that means? And then it just dawned on me, just kind of clicked. And I went, well, we have the Bible. Everything we need to know is in it. The beginning, the present, and the future. It's all there. Everything we need to know is written now. Then it started, I guess the gears in my head started spinning, and I started thinking back, and I go, I have this book, but they didn't. The people we're reading about in it, they did not have this book. They didn't have all of it at the way that we do. Before before the 5 books of Moses were even written, I think the most they had was Jasher and possibly even Enoch. But I'm not exactly sure that they had near the amount of information that we have, or the time to develop an understanding of it the way we've had. And so it really makes sense to me when I think about what would be the purpose for God needing to put signs in the sky now? for us to know a day-to-day event here and there when everything we need to know is written now. And so all I'm kind of going with that and leaning on here is that the people of the day that we're reading about, they didn't have access to this knowledge and information up front. They might have gotten it at some point in their lives, whether it was at the end of their lives or after some miraculous event where they resurrect or whatever. The point is, they didn't know any of this stuff was going to happen the way it's written about in this book. And so as we move through chapter 12 and chapter 13, what we discovered in it is how it breaks apart these events so that you kind of understand when in time chronologically they're happening. And then in chapter 13, it basically just reiterates this. It's constantly doing that, reiterating, repeating the same message over and over and over. And it's not saying it in the same way, it's just saying it different each time, but it's doing that to let you understand the significance of these events. In chapter 13, we went over how it talked about Satan being cast out of, or the dragon being cast out of heaven, a third of the stars, that's a third of the angels getting cast down with them. And I was pointing out a suspicion I have. I don't want to say theory, I think that's overused, but the suspicion that I have with it is that a third of the angels and Satan being cast out of heaven didn't necessarily happen any time prior to this time period that we're in Revelation here. Prior to that, I think the only angels that were not in heaven were the ones that had chosen to come down, or fallen angels, so to speak. We know that through books like Enoch that there were essentially 200 of them that it initially came down. We don't know necessarily if there were any more that came down after that 200 or before this 1/3. Or at least there's nowhere that I've found that just seems to just say, yep, that's absolutely the truth on that. But when it comes to this part of it, the 1/3, I believe that event was taking place around the same time that Jesus was born, during his life, and during his crucifixion and his resurrection, and then his ultimately his return. And so during that time period is when that war in heaven began. The war in heaven begins as a result of God sending Jesus down, and that really upsets Satan. Satan looks at that and goes, man, I'm trying to rule down there, and you just keep interfering. Now you're sending your son. Oh my God, you're sending your son down here. That's essentially how I imagine that going, thought wise, between them. Then as we kept reading through chapter 13, we got down to the parts where it talks about those being led into captivity and those being killed by the sword, and how what they're referencing here is I would have to say that that's during the Millennial Kingdom, but not necessarily throughout the whole duration of it. A lot of this spills over into the little season. In other words, some of these people that are responsible for some of these events possibly lived during the Millennial Kingdom, but also afterwards is all I was kind of going with that. But where we went over where it talks about those that kill with the sword must be killed with the sword, and those that go into captivity shall also, or leadeth into captivity shall also go into captivity. And all I was pointing out with that last night was how when people read this, a lot of times, a lot of your mindset on right and wrong can be jeopardized right here. In other words, you could take someone who, so I would never take anything from anyone, not against their will. I'm not a thief. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in taking anything from anyone. But let's say I did. Let's say you had something I wanted and I take it. As long as you don't do nothing about it, I mean, there's no issue. I have now what you used to have, and you don't, and you're not able to do anything about it unless you pick up your sword and you come at me the way I came at you with my sword. And so the only way to stop me from taking that from you is for you to use the sword that I'm about to use on you. The same concept goes for if I'm leading you astray, then I'm also going to be led. I'm going astray. I'm not going the right way either. That's all. That's what that was referring to in verse 10, where of chapter 13, where it talks about killing with the sword and whatnot. That mindset evolved into modern day thinking. It's where concepts like capitalism come in, or dog eat dog world, or whatever. That's where those terms and that way of thinking, that as long as you don't do nothing, I mean, there ain't no real issue. That's where that line of thought comes from. But that's not what that all that, but that is kind of what that's saying. But it's not given permission to be bad, wrathful, or any of that. It's not giving you permission. It's just saying that there will be people that think this way. And if you don't want them to deal with you the way that they're going to try to, you're going to have to use the same resources to eliminate them as they're trying to eliminate you. And that's through the sword. If they're trying to lead you astray, you go the other way. And if they want to, if they end up following you, then they'll no longer be astray. They will now be where you're at, towards the truth. The point that I'm making here is that all we went through last night in chapter 13, as we were going through this, I was pointing out how these doctrines and this belief in futurism and all that comes into play here, where people read this and they go, oh, well, this looks familiar. I see this happening right now. It's happening over in Ukraine and Russia right now. And you go, so that must be this seed or that vial or that whatever, it's something is going on, and it must be this right here. And they'll use this to scare people into believing this false doctrine of this, basically this false doctrine. And so when we understand what this is doing, that first of all, this is a vision. This is him in the spirit dealing with, talking about all of these things. But once we understand how this is broken up chronologically, then we start seeing, okay, well, these events, even though he's talking about them, as they start happening, they're going to start happening this way and that way. The questions we end up having, what are these stars? What are these signs? What is this? It's going to tell us all of that. But if you had only read up to chapter 13 like most churches do, then and you didn't read any further, you wouldn't know the answers to all those things, and then you'd do like everybody else. It just create these random fantasy ideas about what couldn't be. And so to avoid you leaning on your own thoughts, we read this line upon line. And then as we read through chapter 13, we move on to chapter 14. So in case anyone is new to what's going on and what I'm talking about and hasn't spoken in chat and I haven't recognized you yet, I want to say welcome to the podcast this evening. And I know I was, anyone that just saw, I was kind of going over a kind of a recap of what I went over last night, 12 and 13. Tonight we're starting at verse 1 of chapter 14. And before I do that, let me catch back up with chat so I don't get too far behind on where you guys are. Let's see. Ruthless Savage says, are the falling stars more angels that went rogue? Yes. If I were to have to give just a simple yes or no, I would have to lean on yes. It's my understanding with that is, that that 1/3 was a separate group of angels than the original 200 that came down and landed on Mount Zion. That it's a different group, just like when in well, I think it was chapter 12, where it mentioned Abaddon and Apollyon, and then it goes on to talk about the four angels in Euphrates. It's clear that that's two separate things, but a lot of people have equated them to being the same thing, and that's where you get the angels are the physical manifestation, but Satan is more or less like God, an entity. But that's not that. I don't believe that that would be right. So yeah, I am inclined to believe that that one third, ruthless, is a separate group of fallen angels. All right, let's see. Spirit Church Ministry says astrology and astronomy used to be the same study. Yeah, it actually did. Um, in fact, I try to stay away from astronomy nowadays, but I do still like to look into astrology. And that's where whenever I was going over my timeline stuff in the previous episode, that's where I was kind of getting it. That's where I kind of got a lot of that information from and kind of validated it was through astrology. But that's a whole different thing. That's a timeline all on its own. And Bonnet says one third, 33%, one of their favorite numbers to use. Yep, it sure is. I took a picture of Venus during the alignment and captured the flower of life. It was so beautiful. I bet it was. I'd like to see that. I guess if you have it on your page or something, I'll have to go over there and check that out, Spirit. Miss Wendy. Pepe says too much sky cocaine over here. Couldn't see the alignment. Yeah, that's the way it is over here too. I don't know if you guys remember, but between November and January 1st, there were a lot of videos going around online of people filming the moon, but there was like a giant face beside it. I could never see it. Every time if there was a full moon, I'd go out and look. The sky would be cloudy, so I can't. I could never verify. Jake, get over here. Chill out. Lay down. Chill out. But anyhow, um, let's see. Ain't buying it says oh, Ruthless says there aren't any planets. Yeah, exactly. I don't think there are planets. You have stars and you have luminaries, and I've kind of went over that before, but the stars and the luminaries, they are similar, but they're separate. They each have their own separate duty, so to speak. All right, let's see. Ruthless Savage says, I'm talking about like meteor showers. Are they more rogue angels being tossed down? Oh, I see what you're saying, what you're talking about. That's a that's really a good question. It's something to look into. I've thought about it, but I'm not sure because when you go back to books like Enoch and even Jasher, it explains a little bit of this, and this is even talked about in Jubilees. If the stars don't obey God and do what they're supposed to do, they get cast down. So I can see where that thought would lead us in that direction. There's no, I don't know. I wouldn't be able to say one way or the other though if that's the accurate truth on that though. Seventh day is Saturday, Sunday is first day. Yep. It actually is. Sunday is the first day of the week, and Saturday is the seventh. And technically, the Sabbath, I believe, it's like it's 6 p.m. on Friday to 6 p.m. on Saturday. I think that's the actual time frame for the Sabbath. Lucas, oh yeah, Lucas, I'm glad you found me, man. I seen your comment, and yeah, I know, man. It's really difficult to find my channel. You almost kind of have to see the link and to be able to click on it to find me. And I think a lot of that has to do with the that shadow banning that YouTube still hasn't given up on all the censoring completely yet. Not like other platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and even X. I guess X, but YouTube's they're still censoring people, and I've even tried to find my channel on other people's phones to try to help them find it, and it's hard to find. I don't know why. It just is. Wendy says, lighten up, savage. Life is beautiful. That's a horrible saying. What's a horrible saying? What did I miss? Okay. I think I missed it. Oh, I think I missed something. But you guys are doing the same thing I do whenever I'm in someone else's live. Sometimes I'll have my own conversation going separate from what's going on in live chat. All right. So moving on, I think we caught up a pretty good bit. At least everybody knows, we're at least everybody's on the same page and everybody's following me, and that's the important part of it. All right. Chapter 14, verse 1 says, And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Sion, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written in their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven, as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of a great thunder. And I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps. And they sung, as it were, a new song before the throne, and before the four beasts and the elders. And no man could learn the song that they sang but the 144,000, which were redeemed from the earth. Okay, verse 1 says, And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Sion, and with him 144,000. The reason this would be significant to anyone of that time is because those people are probably supposed to not be here. I think they died, or they end up losing essentially. But but that's not the end of the story. And I heard a voice from heaven, as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of thunder. And I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps. What this is, these three verses, the way I understood this is that this is basically three different periods of time here, but it's in order. What's happening here is we learn earlier that they will end up dying, they get killed. And then what ends up happening, God gets involved, God enters the scene, and then when he does, it says, And they sung, as it were, a new song before the throne and before the four beasts and the elders. And no man could learn the song but the 144,000, which were redeemed from the earth. Redeemed from the earth. That means that they were, in the way I understand it, that's what this means, is that they were dead. But now they're being resurrected. Whether they're, a lot of people might say they've been resurrected and now they're in the spirit, but I don't buy that. I think they died, and I think they came back to life. These are which were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb, whithersoever, basically whoever he goes with. These were redeemed from among men, being the first fruits unto God and unto the Lamb. All right, let's see. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Sundown. Oh yeah, okay. You guys are just agreeing with me on that. It's depends on the Sabbath, the 7-day Sabbath, right on channel. 7-day Sabbath has been the same since Adam. I believe these days never change, only names, the months, the years. Yeah, exactly. I believe you're right. I believe that the dates that we basically have been around since the beginning of us. That kind of goes into my thought that we were never cavemen. We were never just a bunch of dummies, just learning or how to build a wheel. I think mankind has always been an intellectually capable, conscious, sentient being. I don't think there was ever a time where we evolved from a lesser version of ourselves. If anything, we've devolved from a better, greater version of ourselves down to where we're at now. Good evening, Pearl. Glad to see you made it. All right. Now, okay. I think I am pretty good, pretty well and caught up. Adam was the first caveman. Well, essentially the cave of treasures. So yeah, he technically was the first caveman. If I'm, if we're being honest with ourselves, though, that kind of explains where the whole concept of cavemen come from. Otherwise, had that never been a story told or an actual thing, what would make anyone think that we would ever live in caves other than that? So yeah, it does kind of make sense. Oh wow, what a blessing! The Cult of Khan is in here. Connor has joined us. Glad to see you guys have made it. And I like I said, I apologize for my live yesterday. I know I'm scheduled Tuesdays and Thursdays, but yesterday was just I had to do it. I just had to do it. And if you guys go back and watch that, maybe you'll understand why I say that and why it was so important to me. All right. Verse let's see, where were we? Oh yeah. So in verse 5, and in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne. No lies. That's what that means. No guile. They were they had truth. They were always truthful and honest. They didn't lie. For they are without fault before the throne of God. And I saw another angel. Now at this point here, this is a separate event. We'd have to draw a line between 5 and 6 right there. In verse 6, it says, and I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people. In other words, it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what culture, what breed, what class, whatever. You heard this gospel. You heard this if you were living in that time. People will try to figure out how that could be today or like modern day times. And in order for it to fit in with today, you have to use words like metaphor. You have to turn this into a metaphor now. By turning it into a metaphor, you can then say, well, technically with the internet and social media and this and that, the gospel could be preached to the whole world. And that's why people will like I said, people will see these things and their brain will start ticking away at all the things they're familiar with and used to, when you just have to erase that. Erase all the whole world and everything you've ever learned and start over and read. And when you start reading through this, when you do read parts where it's like in verse 6 where it's talking about this angel, you understand that doesn't apply to you. This doesn't apply to you and me, meaning that during this day, no one alive would have went without hearing the gospel. Today, if this were if you were to apply this to today, you could say, yeah, there are some people. I think a lot of people think about that tribe, that weird tribe that nobody can go to that island and talk to them because they'll kill you and eat you or whatever. Yeah, they've probably never heard the gospel. The truth is, they probably never will. But it doesn't necessarily matter. Not that it doesn't matter in any form at all. What I'm saying is that there wouldn't be a need for an angel to fly around us and speak in different languages, talking and preaching and spreading a gospel in the air for all of us to hear it. We already have the gospel. It's called the King James Version Bible. Some call it the Geneva Bible. Some call it just the Bible, the Holy Bible. But we have this word. We have all of that. It'd be almost redundant for any of this to take place again, or just to take place for the first time after having read it. We've had thousands of years. So according to the mainstream narrative, we've had over 2,000 years to learn this, study this, and understand this. And so for at least a 1,000 years, close to it, people have been expecting all of this to happen in their lifetime, waiting on it. And I know the last 100 years it's been that way. We're waiting on it. It's coming. This is about to happen. And then they pass away. The next generation comes up. Here we are. Our great grandparents are now gone. Some of our grandparents are gone, and some of our parents are even gone. And the next is going to be us. When does it end? When does the generations end? That would be the question. It does. The line that we live, the way we live as people ends at some point, but not in chapter 13 and not in chapter 14. Not yet. We would have to keep moving forward in this book. Let's see. I want to read that. Let's see. I don't want to mess up anything. Says, all right. Spirit entry. Wendy says he was in the general tab earlier, but not in a live. It's been a while. I might harass. Okay. All right. She's talking about something else. We already know it. We already know it. He put it in our hearts when he died, if I understood correctly. Yes, exactly. The truth is in our hearts. The understanding of right and wrong. We understand it very differently than they would have been able to understand it. So yeah, I agree with you there. Ain't buying it. What is two separate things, Jenny? Let's see. What are we talking about? 9-day Lucas. Okay. Okay, I got it. I think you mean Hamas, Wendy. And what are you saying we are programmed for? Ryan always has an arsenal. Ain't buying it. Says Romans 10:16. But not all heeded the good news. For Isaiah says, Lord, who has believed our report? So faith is from hearing, and hearing through the word of Christ. But I ask, did they not? Perfect. I mean, that's a good little find there to throw that in there. That's called using this book for, correction and reproof. If we're using it for reproof, we're not rebuking anything. Ain't buying it. That was perfect. Romans 10 is saying exactly what I'm telling you right now about this. Not everybody is going to accept this. Today, if an angel started flying over everybody, spreading this gospel, whether you were a Muslim or a Catholic or whatever, it's a good possibility most everybody would listen to that angel and believe that angel, because that would be something that it's almost impossible to happen in our time. It's hard to believe, and it's hard to imagine, and to see that after having read it for hundreds of years, and to see it, yeah, they would definitely believe that today. Back then, I could see how they would just not all people are going to accept this gospel. It's hard for us to imagine that as Christians, especially modern mainstream Christians. It's hard to imagine that anybody would deny the gospel once they've heard it. But they did. And just like they killed Jesus, the Son of God, the Messiah, they just did not. The world was not as easily persuaded to follow Christ as we would think. And this persists all throughout the Millennial Kingdom. There was not a 1,000 years of peace. It was just 1,000 years of Jesus ruling with a rod of iron. Essentially, he's out there basically trying to get everybody straight. And then I guess he just washes his hands for a little while, and then comes back and says, all right, let me give y'all a little, y'all want to do it? Just keep doing it. I'll be right back. We'll see how that goes. But that's would be speculating for the new ones, people that are new to this, because we hadn't got to that point yet. We're still in we're at verse 7 now. No, we're not. We're in we are. Saying with a loud voice, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of water. This is just letting them know that this is right now. This is imminent. It's just showing you the importance of this is about to happen. We need to get on board with this gospels, what this angel is trying to get out to everybody. And there followed another angel. Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink the wine of the wrath of her fornication. This is old grammar English. It's not the same as the grammar English that we speak and read today necessarily, but the principles are still the same. And there followed another angel, saying, Babylon is fallen, comma, is fallen, comma. In Old English context, that's telling you two places. That's two different places called Babylon. That's all that is. Instead of saying Babylon twice, it just says Babylon is fallen, is fallen. The other Babylon we learn is the mystery Babylon, which essentially it could be the Roman Empire. So you have Babylon and the Roman Empire, or mystery Babylon and the Roman Empire. I believe that's where that comes from, but I'm not 100% on that. It says that great city, because she made all the nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast in his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. Now, verse 9 is further verified or validated by Romans, where, let's see if I can go back up to that. There it was. Where I ain't buying it, I posted in the chat, Romans 10:16, where it's basically saying, hey, I'm telling everybody and they're just not listening. They, who's going to hear this? Who's going to accept it? I mean, I'm telling everybody and they're just not, people just don't want to accept the truth. They just don't. They just are opposed to it. People cannot stand the idea of being controlled, even though they don't understand that they're being controlled. So verse 9 is talking about the people that will accept the mark of the beast. And that's going to be millions. It's probably the majority. It's probably most people end up accepting the mark of the beast at this time. And then it says, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. They get cast into hell. Not into hell, but into the lake of fire. That's what that's telling us right there. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever. Okay, before I move on with verse 11, I want to clarify in verse 9 and 10. When we get to the point in chapters 19, 20, and 21 where it talks about the resurrected, the they that were dead in Christ, and then all the others that never heard the gospel, that is not talking about these people right here. In verse 9, these people heard the gospel, rejected the gospel, accepted the mark of the beast. They go to hell. They go to the lake of fire. They don't die and then get resurrected for a second chance. That's not going to happen. The reason I want to make that clear is because I've seen theories and videos where people will think that those people end up, that some people today believe that they come from these people, is all I'm pointing out. All I'm saying is that there are a lot of those people that don't make it, that just they don't continue. Once they accept that mark of the beast, it's over for them. There is no other chances. That is it. Once they die, they're dead, and then they'll never be alive ever again. In verse 11, and the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night, who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. There it's just telling you this, that twice. It's telling you basically three times if you want to include verse 9 in that. So you could say that that's the three, that's it telling you three times. At least it's telling you twice. And then it says in verse 12, here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that kept the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. So now we have to draw a line between 11 and 12, because now we're no longer talking about those same people. Now we've moved on, and it'll be talking about a different set of people. In verse 11, again, where I was saying, where it was talking about the no rest for the day or night, further emphasizing it's as important. Pay attention to this. That's all that is to you and me. Hey, this is important. Check this out. In case you didn't believe me, I'm going to say it again, but I'm going to say it in a different way, but I'm saying the same thing. That's all that is. It's important. It's necessary to know, because you need to know that so that you don't you don't fall for these same delusions and deceptions that they were under during this time period. Okay, in verse 12, it says, here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. This is talking about the millennial reign, and how it wouldn't just be peaceful flowers and puppy dogs all the time. It's not going to be the most pleasant 1,000 years. However, I would imagine, based on what we've read up to this point, that the 1,000 years is at the very least going to be better than it was before all of that. Before the 1,000 years, it was pretty bad. I mean, if you got an angel flying around, 3 of them, spreading the gospel, telling you all of this stuff, and they're still denying this, then those people were super lost. And they were not soft the way we're soft today. I don't think this generation could handle even a fraction of these events. I think most people would just die just wherever they're standing, die of fear. They just could not handle all of this. I mean, most people are just mentally confused about what they are and who they are anyways. They wouldn't be so confused, though, if they would just read this book. It's made available for everybody. Most people that can't afford it can go get one for free. People give these things away. There's really no excuse anymore, other than we have a hard time understanding it because we're educated. So once we learn how to bypass the education, but also at the same time utilize that education to help understand this, it just makes it make way more sense. It simplifies it. All right. Wendy says, I think the mark has been and always will be our thoughts, our actions. We follow the way or our own. Yeah, actually, that makes sense. I thought about that too. I've thought about it, even though it does literally, you could say it's a mark, but it could be as the same way as the word being written on our hearts. It's not like God. It's not like there's a bunch of words written on our hearts, actual, real pen and ink words. But I can see where you're going with that, Wendy. And I've thought about that as well, and I agree. I think that's likely the case. Satan does seem to like repeating himself. Yes, he does. Let's see. All right. Oh, he's referring to Lucas. Let's see. Lucas is new with this, but he says there's definitely going to be some sort of mark, in my opinion. Yes. They can't help themselves. I agree. I think there will be something similar to this. All of this, there will be something similar to all of this. Whether it's everywhere or isolated, that's a whole different thing. And that's where I get into the whole when these events that we're reading about in Revelation, when they were happening, it wouldn't have been isolated to this area or this region or this country or that country. it would have been all happen. Everybody would have been experiencing this. Like I said, it's not like 1/3 is all like they just literally got rid of all of the Americas. It would have been a 1/3, but scattered throughout the world. This would have been felt by everybody. Everybody would have been experiencing that. So while during our time, they will mimic these events and mirror them and try to replicate them, but it won't be the same because it won't be happening everywhere. But it'll happen to just enough people that they will believe that these events are happening to them right now. I've never understood the Sunday argument. Yeah, I haven't either. I haven't either. Ruthless Savage says death and hell will be thrown into the lake of fire. Yep, absolutely. But back to what you said, Lucas, on the I've never understood the Sunday argument. I mean, I understand where they're coming from on it, but I don't. I get it. I don't understand why they would continue to lean on that, especially having heard the gospel and now that we've have it written and where we can read it. It really doesn't make sense why anybody would choose a losing team, but they do it every day. But I think the issue is that a lot of people believe that they're not on the losing team. They believe they're on the winning team. They don't believe they're bad. And that's just that's the way that goes. Um, Hey, Bonnet says, I think they are messing with hormones. I think there are many reasons for the confusions for some. Yeah, I agree. I would agree with that. I could definitely see that being a possibility. All right. Like I said, ADHD fell over here. And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him that sat on that cloud, thrust in my sickle and reap, for the time is come for thee to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. This is this is telling you that this is the rapture. That's all that's referring to. At that point, he's telling the angel to take his sickle and cast it into the earth and reap the harvest. That's the wheat. This is him gathering up the wheat. And we learn about this earlier. I think it's in Matthew when they talk about the wheat and the tares. It Jesus is kind of using what's that word? Yeah, he's telling it like a parable, but this is what he's referring to. And then now you have this angel telling John about it. John the Revelator. And then in verse 19 it says, and the angel thrust in his sickle into the earth, and gave the vine of the earth, and cast it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. He's saying that now, once this happens, it's not going to be wonderful for everybody. For the ones that would be harvested, though, I could imagine it would be pretty good. But we remember as we've read this, there are way more people that did not accept the truth than the ones that did. It's kind of like today, it's if you tell the truth on anything, people will hate you. That's just the way it is. Unless they benefit from it, they're not gonna love you. They're not gonna love you, and they're not gonna like it. They're gonna stay away from it as much as they can. But that's what all I'm saying is that when he thrusts his sickle into the earth, you don't have to necessarily do that unless you're trying to uproot the plant. You would chop it at its base. But he's casting it into the earth, so he's trying to completely remove these people from all the bad of the earth that's going on. He's not trying to leave any remnants of these people, of his people, God's people. He's trying to, he's just separating. That's all that means. And the winepress was trodden without the city, and blood came out of the winepress, even unto the horses' bridles, by the space of 1,600 furlongs. All it should be telling anyone at that point right there is that after the harvest, or due to the harvest of the wheat, all that are left They're really suffering. And to put this into modern day perspective, um, take Jeff Bezos, remove all the people in the world that could be his employees, and now tell him to go out there and survive. He would have a lot harder time than the rest of us. We could make it. We could deal with life. I believe any one of us in this chat, especially in this community, if you took all the rich people away, we would be just fine. We would move on and carry on with life. It would be wonderful. But I would imagine that the people that accepted Christ in this weren't the wealthiest of the wealthy during that time. They were not the earthly leaders, the earthly masters and rulers or whatever. They were just they were the ones who don't make it. It's not going to be good for them. They're going to really suffer as a result of losing the people that do end up being harvested and gathered up by God. All right. So chapter 15, and like I said, chapter 15 is pretty short. It's not a very long one. As you can see, it's only 8 verses. So I don't see why we can't make it through this chapter tonight. Before I do, let me make sure I haven't missed anything or any too important questions that I need to address, comments that I need to address. Let's see. Rome got the Protestants to fight each other. Yeah, actually, so I don't know if that's if you were talking about the same thing I'm about to say, but Spirit Church Ministry says Rome got the Protestants to fight each other. And where my mind went as soon as I read that, I was thinking about the wilderness and how the first so-called Christians would have been fleeing the cities. They wouldn't have been hanging out doing what we're doing, chilling, while just 3 or 4 miles down the road, they're probably having a gunfight down there. Who knows? But we're all just basically chilling. We're just sitting tight. But during the during the basically, well, yeah, I guess during the tribulation, then the fall of Rome, it wasn't very good for Christians. They were not welcome. Oh man, Carol Mapleston, good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. Says, I don't know how people think they are able to tell what timeline we are in. Yeah, it's a tough question. It's a tough thing. It's a tough narrative to correct and to unravel. The At the end of the day, and I think if John Fry were here, he would have already said it in chat, that no man knows the day or the hour, and none of us do, even in the Little Season community. We may have a better handle on a roundabout time frame, but there's no one that could actually say when in time anything is other than God. Time has been manipulated and changed so much, nobody really absolutely knows. But what we are learning, though, and we are getting closer to it, which scripture does validate that as well. It says, knowledge will increase and be abound. When it says, just like they changed the times and laws, they changed the feast days, introduced Julian, then Gregorian calendars, changed the Ten Commandments to suit their desires. That's changing times and laws. Yep, absolutely. Jenny Murphy gives a thumbs up. The Roman Catholic Church even admitted that they changed the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday because the Pope claims to have the authority of God on earth. And that's true. And I think maybe it was Paul that said it, or maybe one of y'all said it, and I just read it. But somebody said this earlier today, I believe. But anyways, I was going to say that I believe they're right. The current the current Catholic Church is not the same Catholic Church from like the Millennial Kingdom era. It's a totally different thing. But I think a lot of the ways from it, I don't know, they kind of mirror it. It's about the best way I can explain that. All right, let's see. No, by all means, Wendy, don't stop talking. Rejoice Artworks is in the house. Welcome. Glad to see you made it. Glad to see you made it. Hi, God bless all. God bless all. Um, let's see. Last chat I see, Pearl says at Wendy, chat away, sis. These love streams are chill, super chill. Absolutely. I don't mind you guys having your own conversations if you find my conversation or whatever I'm talking about not quite as interesting, because whenever I go back and review myself, make sure I didn't make any too bad of mistakes, I like to read chat and keep up with you guys. It's actually easier because I can go back and I know what you're saying applies to whatever I'm saying. And but I like that. I've been taking notes, and I want to address certain things in a later video, but I will get around to doing that. All right, good to see you, Rejoice Artworks. Glad to see you here. All right, moving on, verse 15, and I saw in chapter 15, verse 1 says, "And I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, seven angels having the seven last plagues, for in them is filled up with the wrath of God." It's just letting you know that after this, the tribulation will be coming to an end. God's wrath will have been poured out onto the earth, and he'll be done with this part of his plan. "And I saw, as it were, a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast, and over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, stand on the glass, stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of God, and over the number of his name." I don't know why I read that out loud like that, but my brain was telling me that this was I guess it's just showing that the beast is being destroyed. You know, that they basically, God is overriding him. He's writing his name over the beast name. He's just basically showing victory over the beast. The beast has been defeated at this point. This is the war. This is a big battle that they have. This is a big war. So there's a war in heaven. After they fight in the war of heaven, then they come down to earth. um, it's why I think, I can't remember. Never mind. I'm not going to go into that because I don't remember enough about what I was going to say. So I'm going to have to bring that back up another time. It was something to do with the stars, and there was a book, and I can't remember what year it was printed. I don't want to lie about it, but it it almost alludes to this happening not so long ago, is all I'm saying. "And they sing the song of Moses and the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb, saying, Great and marvelous are thy works, Lord God Almighty, just and true are thy ways, thou King of saints." This is talking about them rejoicing over the death of the beast. "Who shall not fear thee, O Lord, and glorify thy name? For thou art holy, for all nations shall come and worship before thee, for thy judgments are made manifest." Now, I want y'all to understand that when I'm reading this, just because it says all nations, that doesn't tell me all people. That all people that are living that are part of these nations. But this wouldn't necessarily be referring to all the ones that have died already. I mean, not there wouldn't be a lot of the bad people left at this point. All that would be left at this point would be the remnants of the decent people, the ones who would eventually carry on post millennial kingdom. That's all that is. I believe that's what I believe. I'm right on that. I could be could be wrong. And then after that, I looked, and behold, the temple of the tabernacle of the testimony in heaven was opened. Now we learned before that when God was in that, actually, hold on. I'm thinking about earlier. I was reading this, so I'm thinking I'm actually ahead of myself on this. So let me. I almost ruined that. And after that, I looked and behold, the temple of the tabernacle of the testimony in heaven was opened, and the seven angels came out of the temple, having the seven plagues, and clothed in pure and white linen, and having their breasts girded with golden girdles. So basically, what that's saying is that, and the seven angels, when they came out of the temple and having the seven plagues, clothed in white, pure white, all it's saying that their job is done now. It's finished. This is symbolizing completion. And one of the four beasts gave unto the seven angels seven golden vials, full of the wrath of God, who liveth forever and ever. That's verse 6 and 7. It's basically just is reinforcing both idea or that first verse, or verse 5, I guess. It's just re-emphasizing. It's not anything we should latch onto and get lost in. Is all I'm trying to say. I know this stuff sounds fantastical, and a lot of people, when they study through this, they get lost in the reverence of its fantasticalness. That's not a real word, but I didn't have a better word for it. And anyways, but in verse 8 it says, and the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power, and no man was able to enter into the temple till the seven plagues of the seven angels were fulfilled. All right. This is what I was about to say a minute ago when I had to stop myself. In verse 5, when it's talking about the temple, the tabernacle, the testimony in heaven was opened. In verse 8, it says, no man was able to enter into the temple until the seven plagues of the seven angels were fulfilled. That's verse 6 and 7. When we see that they're fulfilled, they get fulfilled. And so for a time, God is not with men, and then he is with men. That he becomes with men again. But during the time of all the terrible destruction and the tribulations, it would be basically what I took from that, reading that, is that you would have had, it'd be like basically like saying people are out there praying to God, Lord, Lord, please help us, and it's as bad as bad as bad. You're praying, and just nothing every day, nothing. If I pray to God today and say, hey, I need to talk to somebody. My phone rings. It happens. I get what I asked for. But if I were in that moment and I were one of these people, it would be basically God he's not helping you out. You're on your own for a little while. But then when the plagues are finished, they're fulfilled. That's when that's when God is back. That's when they're all back together. God and men become one again. All right, let me see. Before I go into 16, let me catch up with the chat over here. I need to figure out. I need some time off, some more time off. I should have done that the other day when I was off. I need some more time off. I want to be able to pull up the chat that I'm reading up on the screen. Like I see other people do that. I know Tyler does that. JT does that. Paul does that. Connor does that. And so I want to learn how to do that. And I think I figured it out. It's just I'm just going to play with it and practice. But so maybe you guys can't see what I'm reading, but I'm going to read it out loud. Oh wow, I didn't see you. You made it in here, Mr. Joffrey. Good to see you, brother. All right. Pearl says the fog is so thick outside my house right now. It looks like it's snowing in our security cameras. It's been like that around here. It's weird. We usually have a very humid environment, and it's a lot of moisture down here, but it's been really dry lately, and my skin is feeling it, suffering from that. But I see Joffrey has made it and joined us. Spirit Church Ministry says the war in heaven was a civil war. U.S. is heading for civil war. Yep, I agree. I'm not sure if it's gonna be a civil war or just a giant a world war, but I can see it. I can see it happening. I definitely see it happening. Cage Fighter says, oh, she says, wow, Pearl. And does the fog have a smell? That would be weird if it does. Jenny Murphy says, the Roman Catholic Church inverted and corrupted from how the church was instituted at the beginning of the millennial reign. Jesus said, call no man father and don't have graven images and idols. Yes, that is absolutely what happened. Yeah, and that she was basically just reiterating what I was saying earlier about that. Pearl says, Joffrey, some people in our area said their air smelled metallic, but Alec didn't smell anything. I didn't either, but I wasn't outside much today. Spirit and Truth, Wendy says, Jenny, they have people talking and praying to the dead, which is a no-no. It's part of the reason I have beef with Jasher. Okay, I could see that. I could see that. Cage Fighter says, Jenny, they swear their icons and not, are not idols. They swear their icons are not idols. Okay. Oh, I know what you're saying. Yeah, you're right. They're icons. They're not idols. They're just celebrities or whatever. I get it. I think that's what you're saying. Isn't an icon and an idol essentially the same thing? It is. But people will use that. They use this English language, um, I guess, in a way that they even it's like they'll use this and they're so clever they'll say, "Oh, that's two different words, so they have two different meanings." When really they don't. They mean the same thing. It's English. That's just how we've been bred to talk, and it's a backwards language that we have going on to begin with. But I don't know how we could I don't know how we could I don't know how we could change it. I don't know if I could learn another way to speak it. Hank Bynum says Trump just got awarded the Golden Pager. Ah, I didn't see that. Pearl, people have been getting sick from that fog. It was tested somewhere and there are parasites in it. Oh, I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that one bit. I would say so, but I'm not a Catholic. That's Cage Fighter. All right. Let's see. Colt Khan, he made it back. All right, awesome. Joffrey says, I had a period where I would ask Catholics about call no man father, and 0% even gave it the slightest consideration. They all had the same asinine response that because we have a biological father, therefore, what Jesus said, sorry about that. So therefore, what Jesus said is null and void. All right. So actually, I want to hit on that. Joffrey says, I had a period where I would ask Catholics about call no man father, and 0% of them gave it the slightest consideration. That goes into that whole argument that a lot of Christians will fall victim to, where they'll say things like, well, it, God knows what's on my heart. It's kind of like once you see the truth in Jesus' name, you know that more than likely he wasn't called Jesus while he was walking on this earth. But you don't have to believe me, just like I don't have to believe any of you guys. I do have to believe this book, though. When it comes to stuff like that, I feel like a lot of that ends up happening with that, and is they'll use this as a way to say, well, we're saying father, but it's a different context. In our heart, it means something different than when we're talking about God. And that's all. That's really while they'll use that to justify their actions or their choice to do and live according to their own ways and their own thoughts. We do that to justify our bad behavior. And when you take people like this community, where most of us probably don't do that on a regular basis, it makes it really difficult to communicate with regular people, because you notice that most folks never say what they really mean. You kind of have to read between the lines almost every time. Not trying to go off on a tangent on folks there, but that's I was just hitting on what Joffrey was saying about talking to the Catholics. Spirit Church Ministry says they can use whatever language they want. You can't externalize God. That's right. That's right. Great to see everybody. Donuts in the house. Well, good morning. I know it's probably morning for you over there. And good morning, Donut. Glad to see you're here, brother. Ain't Bonnet says, I heard emojis were connected to Solomon's demons. I think that's what you're saying. I'm not sure about that, but I do. That is a very interesting rabbit hole to jump into, talking about Solomon in his demons. There's a whole another book on that that's not in our Bible. Maybe I'll pull that up and we'll go over that someday. But um, tonight we're gonna end up wrapping up with chapter 16 is what we're gonna end up doing. Let's see. Make sure I'm caught up with everybody in chat. Let's see what's going on. Oh, I did miss some stuff. Just another reason you need to stop talking. Of all the autocorrecting it chooses to, what the hell? Colt says, yeah, check it out, Pearl. Look up exploding pagers. Always so much symbolism. I think y'all are talking about that golden pager that Aunt Bonnet was talking about. I saw earlier Trump's trying to get us into Gaza. That's going to open up a whole can of worms. I just don't see how that ends well for all of us, or even for them. I don't see how that ends well for anyone. But I see where he's coming from a real world, modern day political perspective. Basically, anyone that's confused with that, what's going on with Trump and the whole Gaza stuff, you can kind of look at it like Trump is looking at it as though they've had over 1,000 years to figure out their issues and they can't get it all figured out. Now we're going to step in and we're just going to take it and we're going to figure it out for you. That's his train of thought. So if you understand that, you can kind of understand where this ends up leading us in the real world when it comes to all of that. Ministry says God doesn't expect us to know his true name right now. We can't. Jesus showed we can call him Father. That's right. That's right. He does give us his name in the end, but we're not there yet. And so none of us can know it. You're right. None of us knows the Father's name. Now, Jesus can be whatever, I guess, we call him until he gets here and he'll clarify for us. A screenshot of the one Connor created for property when they don't make these. Scott shouting them. What are y'all talking about? Oh, you said, oh no, you knew immediately I was going to catch that. What? I missed something you guys are talking about. Yeah, okay, I'll have to go back and read that and catch back up with what you guys are talking about there. But Pearl says that could be like YouTube for newbies, which is how I started out in these chats last year. Okay, America first, but first Gaza. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, yep, exactly. That's the political way. America first, get in office, up, Gaza. Yep, that's exactly how that works. Anybody who's been around for a little while, like me, 40 something years, you saw it coming. You saw it coming a mile away. Okay, I believe we're all caught up with chat and my random rhetoric. So let me get back on point where I was at. In verse 1, chapter 16, it says, and I heard a great voice out of the temple saying to the seven angels, Go your ways, pour out the vials of the wrath of God upon the earth. This isn't happening again. This is just going back over what we just went over in 15. It's just repeating itself. And the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth, and there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worshipped his image. There's golly, I'm gonna find that video, and I think I'll find that video and I'll try to link it. But there's a video of a guy who says invented he's responsible for the mark of the beast today. And he was saying in this interview that he was working on this device, this little thing that goes into the skin. And he was saying the reason he believes that that's the mark of the beast that they were making him develop and design is because the word mark in English, in our English version of it, when it's translated backwards, it's like to insert. And so he's referencing a needle. He thinks that that means needle, that the mark is actually inside the skin and not on the skin. I don't necessarily buy that, but people will have fallen victim to that, is all I'm saying. They will have heard that and go, oh man, yeah, that does sound like the mark of the beast, and so it must be upon us. Well, it's not. It's not upon us, is all I'm pointing out with that. Then it says, and the first wind poured out, oh yeah, I've read that. And the second angel poured out his vial upon the sea, and became as the blood of a dead man, and every living soul died in the sea. Now we read this in the earlier parts of this of Revelation, where it talks about the sea would be made bitter or like salty and whatnot, and a third of the earth was burned up. All those were that was prophecy, is what that was. Now these events are happening. This would be, if you were looking at this whole book chronologically, unless I'm wrong here, chapter 16 is now went from prophecy to current. Now these events would be happening, so to speak. And this could all be still prophecy, essentially, but it's like as you're reading it, these are happening. Is the way I think you're meant to approach this. But I could be wrong. And it says, because it says and the second angel poured out his vial. Oh, I read that. And the third angel poured out his vial upon the rivers and the fountains of the waters, and they became blood. And I heard the angels of the waters say, Thou art righteous, O Lord, which art and was and shall be, because thou hast judged thus. All it's saying is that basically it's kind of like you're getting scolded, you're getting in trouble, but he's telling you he loves you. This is all with love. It's not that he's doing this because he hates people, even though people might at that time going through this might think that. This is all being done with love. That's all that's really, to me, that's all it's trying to tell you. And then it says, and I heard the angel of the waters say, oh, for they shed, I don't know why I keep doing that, and they have shed the blood of saints and prophets, and thou hast given them blood to drink, for they are worthy. For they have shed the blood of saints and prophets. That's telling you the saints will be killed, the prophets will be killed, and that thou hast given them blood to drink, for they are worthy. And I heard another out of the altar say, even so, Lord God Almighty, true and righteous are thy judgments. Like I said, all it's telling you is that, yeah, it may not seem right, it may not seem fair, but it is. It only doesn't seem fair to you if you're on the wrong side of this whole thing. If you're on the losing side, definitely it's not going to seem fair to you. And the reason I'm pointing that out is goes back to what that radio host said about this community and what we're talking about here. when she was saying that, um, oh man, make sure I didn't lose my thoughts. And I heard an altar say, oh yeah, when it was talking about all this, they were saying, oh yeah, she was saying that, I don't know. It's like it's like they want to. They think that this is gonna be our time. I guess is what I was gonna end up leading into with that. I lost my thought on what I was gonna say. Um, I think I'm getting ahead of myself on it. Was what I'm doing. But for they have shed the blood of saints, prophets, and the blood and the worthy. And I heard another out of the altar say, even so. Okay, I lost my point. I was gonna make a point about that. For they have shed the blood of saints and the prophets, and now is given them blood to drink, for they are worthy. And I heard another out of the altar say, even so, Lord God Almighty, true, righteous are thy judgments. I guess what I'm trying to say with that is that, yeah, if you were around and you weren't necessarily saved, but not necessarily one of the just most horrible people, just not a good person, that you would think life is not fair right now. It's just tough. But it is. Oh, I remember what I was gonna say. It is right. It's just may not be right to you, but it's not. It's kind of like people who are afraid of the fact that the next step for us is the white throne of judgment. Anyone who's worried about that is on the wrong team, anyways. They're on the wrong side of that. Those that are concerned and caught up with the idea that they missed out on the millennial kingdom, they don't get to hang out with Jesus for 1,000 years. For anybody that's concerned about that and thinks that not learning that in the little season has made this the worst thing ever, it's because they don't want to go through the judgment. But little that they understand, it doesn't matter if you're saved or not saved, you're still going to be judged no matter what. Everybody goes through the white throne of judgment. So if we get to skip all of this that we're going over and go right to the end, seems to me that's a way better doctrine than any other doctrine I've ever heard. What better way to accomplish this book than to skip straight to the end and be with our Father, our Creator? It just seems to me like that would just be the best way to be. So I don't understand where they're coming from accusing this community of being doom and gloomers when it comes to all of this, is all I'm pointing out with that. So that was where I was going with my thoughts. Sorry, it took me a minute to gather that, but I don't know where it went. It just left me for a second. All right, so moving back on. Verse 8 says, the fourth angel poured out a vial upon the sun, and power was given unto him to scorch men with fire. And men were scorched with great heat, and blasphemed the name of God, which hath power over these plagues. And they repented not to give him glory. Now, I believe it was about episode 3, the one where they're talking about the 4 horsemen. We went over this back then, but here it is in verse 16. It's talking about it again. The reason I'm pointing that out is that in our episode 3, where we were talking about the 4 horsemen, that was prophecy. That was him being shown the future. This is now telling you again because it's wanting the reader to understand that this would be happening in present day. So it's happening again. It's not our present day, but present day to this time period or this era of time. That's where that is. All right, let me see. Make sure I'm not lost again. Verse 10 says, the fifth angel poured out his vial upon the seat of the beast, and the kingdom was full of darkness, and they gnawed with their tongues for pain. Terrible. It's just bad. It's getting bad, and it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse until all these seals and all these angels have done their part. That's what this is telling us. But it's already kind of pre-warned us. In fact, it's now telling us, it just keeps telling us over and over and over. But now it's telling us how they're feeling, the effects of it, of all of what we were telling you before, what's going to happen in the future. Now you're seeing the effects of it. That's all this is what it's showing you. It's why I'm inclined to believe that this would be, if you separated this thing in chronological order, these events are now current in a way, but it's not like they all happen the way I'm snapping my finger, the way we're reading. When I'm saying current events, I'm still referring to a long period of time that all of this would be happening. It's just not happening now. It's not happening now. If it was, we'd all be experiencing it. Is all I'm saying to that. For they are the spirits of devils, working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to battle of that great day of God Almighty. This here, I believe, is where when God enters the scene. He's now here. God, Jesus, the Christ are here. Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth and keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. What this is telling you is that this is going to be fast. It's going to be so fast. In other words, don't be just going on about life. Don't worry about taking that shower, that 30-minute shower, or that 20-minute shower. Don't worry about going on your trip or your vacation or doing whatever it is that you're planning on doing, but keep you some clothes on, keep your shoes on, and be ready to go, because this is coming, and all of these things are going to happen fast. This is all going to happen quickly. But when I say quickly, we're not talking 100 years. We're talking 7. It's not a long period of time that all of this happens. It's why it's so important for God to send these angels out into the world, because they don't have time to do what you and I are doing. They don't have time to sit and study and read Revelation and go, when is it coming? He says it's this. Oh, yeah. Well, but they could mean this. They don't have time to do all that. So it makes sense to me now when I look at this and go, there would be no need for that to happen today. We got the book. We got it. We have all that information. It'd be like repeating himself. And God doesn't need to do that. He's already repeated himself several times in this book, and then he happens in real life. And here we are. All right. Verse 16, and he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon. This is where it all kind of comes to an end. This is the final battle. And the 7th angel poured out his vial into the air, and there came a great voice out of the temple of heaven from the throne, saying, It is done. And there were voices and thunders and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake and so great. Now we learned previously when this was happening in the earlier chapters that this is your mud floods. This is the end of the millennial season. This is all that's pointing out. That's what that's talking about. And we learned that from the others where it talks about buildings, or it talks about things sinking. We learned that we now know where we're at in the timeline here, essentially. What exact date, what exact year, I'm not going to let anyone tell any of us one way or the other, though some of us have pretty solid theories. I know I have my theories, and we'll go into that when we go back to my timeline stuff. And I know other folks like Jason Jack has his theories, and Paul has his theories. All of us have our sort of theories on when exact time frame, but none of us know the exact day or hour. That's all I'm saying to that. All right, but this does let you know that there were thunders and lightnings and earthquakes. I mean, just massive geological worldwide events. Now, kind of going back to Wesley Curry joined us again. So going back to one thing I was saying before, about these earthquakes and all these events and stuff. When we look into timelines, like the chronological order, going back into things like astrology and astronomy, you'll learn that everything has its own time frame. The angels, for example, I think even Joffrey pointed that out in his video. The angels were here alive and existed before man. So you had the angels and then man. So you can kind of relate to why they would be kind of jealous of man. They were here first and now man. The same is true in this. As we read this, certain things happen first. I mean, happen, but not. It's like these events don't. It's like they're happening quickly in the big scheme of things, but it is kind of spread out. Is all I'm saying. And then, like I said, where was I? When these earthquakes and lightnings and thunders are happening in verse 18, if you were watching my moon map stuff, or if you've seen any of that, I was kind of showing how our earth is, and how the clock in Prague, and how it shows the way our world works and how time works within it. That's the celestial clock. That goes all the way back to the creation of the stars. But that timeline has nothing to, I mean, it kind of has something to do with us, but it's not our timeline. Our timeline starts with Adam. We don't start with that. And the only reason I'm clarifying that is because when I was working on these timelines a few years ago, well, it's actually a way longer than that, but when I was working on them, was following that astrology timeline kind of path. And I'm of the understanding that when this millennial kingdom ended, when we read where it says, and it is done in verse 17, when he says it is done, I'm of the understanding that we shifted from one celestial age to a now new celestial age. The issue is that we're not going to be around to experience this in the entirety of this age that we're in. And that would explain why it's called a little season. We're only here for a part of this age. But all I'm saying is that it's not like these things happen without any type of explanation other than just these words. Some of the science behind it, you would say, the real science behind it, you could say that at the end of this millennial kingdom, when he says it is done, we shifted from one point to the next, and now we're in a totally different age or season, so to speak. But we're not gonna. This world doesn't. We don't last. It doesn't last long enough for the entire duration of that. The cosmic celestial season from that clock in Prague, it's 2,160 years. So we don't. A little season is only a fraction of that. Some people have had different theories on it being 250 years, and some have it at 500 years. I find it interesting how it doesn't matter whether your theory is 500 or 250, they still end at the same time regardless. So it doesn't necessarily matter on that, I don't think. All right, let me catch back up here. Let's see. Bye. Wesley Curry the second came back, and he had to come back. He was testing us last time, but we were ready for him this time. Bless you, Donut. Bless you, Donut. Let's see. What are we blessing Donut over? I must have missed something, but I can't see it and I can't find it. All right. Jenny Murphy says the truth about where we are actually on the timeline crushes the futuristic pipe dream fantasy that dispensationalists are longing for. And I agree. I agree. This split Pangea. That's a question from Ain't Buying It. Yeah, so the what we are when we are shown the images of Pangea in school, that whole landmass I feel like is still there, and but I think the lands that we're part of are not are separate from Pangea, but I do think that they were together. I do think North America and Africa, as it currently is today, were together. It's just it wasn't Pangea. Pangea is still out there. We just can't access it. But yeah, I think that's when all the land started shifting around, when all these earthquakes and lightnings and thunders and all these major events. All I'm saying is that it would make sense that if there was a celestial event about to take place that would ultimately lead to all of these terrible natural so-called natural events, that God would use that moment to his advantage when it comes to this, the context of everything that we're reading here. Just makes sense that it doesn't necessarily. It's kind of like, if you had superpowers and you could wish somebody, if somebody was hungry and you could say, "Yep, you're not hungry anymore. Now you're full," and all of a sudden they're full. In a way, it's kind of like that in my mind. I guess is how I envision that. All right, Pearl says, Connor, yeah, it was glitching and Res video skipped for like a whole minute. Thought it happened for everyone, but I guess it was just me. Um, yeah, actually, so yeah, something was going on with my OBS the other day. I'm not exactly sure what was going on. At one point, it ended up it tried to take the sound out. It's weird. I don't know if my OBS caused that or if something else caused it. I know I was in someone else's chat earlier and my computer screen, it just showed, it went to an error and then it reloaded and went right back. I don't know what's going on. I think they're trying to do stuff live with the YouTube algorithm and whatnot. All right. Jenny Murphy says dispensationalist doctrine leads to pride. They think they are special. Yes, they do. They're saved. They're gonna rule with Jesus. They're the chosen ones. They're God's favorite people. That's all of them. And it's in a way they've used that doctrine to self idolize themselves. It takes away from God is all that does. I did time in the colonel's army. It was hell. Yep, I did 15 years in the service over here. Pearl says, "Oh, colonel, not colonel." The Culticon says we have called Wesley out for being Colonel Sanders before. Who's? Oh yeah, they're talking about that Wesley. That'd be funny. What if that was the Wes Huff, and he was disguised as that Wesley fella? That would be so funny. He's spying on us. He's checking us out. He said, "Oh, they're gonna come at me sooner or later. I better be ready." Um, Pearl says, "LOL, I remember that." Cult Con says, "I feel you, Joffrey, but that chicken is still damn good." That's one thing I like about Connor. He is, man, you have a good heart, man. Your attitude is so good. I love your vibe, bro. You have a good vibe. It's just good. It's just, I don't know. I listen to him and I'm just smiling. I'm like, yeah, I can feel it. It's good to have people like Culticon, Mr. Connor over there, doing his part in the little season. Spirit Truth says Pearl Colonel is not on the list. And Carol Mapleson says Jesus on the cross said it is finished. Satan was defeated. Yeah, so what he was referring to, yeah, well, okay. So that's an argument there, Carol. I would have to say that you're in a way, yeah, he didn't lie. It was finished. But what was finished was the old world, the old way. Things are now going to be different. It's going to change. That's that's what he was referring to, I believe, when he was talking about that on the cross. All right. I think you guys are wild. Jeffrey says the chicken from Tyson when I worked there, but that was a long time ago. Yeah, you guys are on something. Are on to some other topic there. I'm not exactly sure. I missed something on up, and I have to scroll way on back up there. But yeah, I think I think we're all caught up with what you guys are saying. Okay, Carol. Okay, yeah, okay. So yeah, we're on the same page. Jenny says you would change your mind if you seen a Franken chicken. Yeah, I would say so. I would say so. All right, so let's see how much further we got on this chapter. I may pause this chapter right here and pick back up next week. And honestly, I may or may not be here next week. I am on call. That was another reason I wanted to go live last night, was just to kind of give you guys another uh another video to kind of go back and watch and listen to, and so that we can kind of move past 13. I didn't want to end this week with chapter 13 of Revelation and then be on call next week and not have any of that, and then people be so still focused on chapter 13. I was trying to get us away from that and moving us forward with it, and I'm doing that for the new people, not necessarily all of us, but for new people that are new to understanding this scripture in accordance to real accurate chronological order, like the real time frame of where we're at in time with it. Yeah, I don't want to. I do actually. I think I'm gonna continue on a little bit further. I'm gonna go on a little bit further with this, and then we'll pause this. Um, let's see. In verse 11, yeah. So in verse 11, it says, "And blaspheme the God of heaven because of their pains and their sores, and repented not of their deeds." Oh yeah, remember when I was telling you about the guy who said that he thinks he created that mark of the beast, and it kind of, because of the way the word mark comes from, to insert or something to that effect. When in verse 11, when it says their pains and sores repented not, the reason I'm pointing that out is because a while back, when that was like a real big thing on the internet, people learned that with lithium batteries the lithium battery that would go into that little device that they put in their hand, that it has a 3.5 year shelf life, or life expectancy. And what that means is that in 3.5 years, that battery is not going to be good anymore, and you'll have to get that, whatever that thing is that they developed would have to be replaced. And so what the guy was saying was that, according to scripture, that this is all supposed to take place over a 3.5 year period, and or at least the second half of tribulation. And when that happens, that lines up with this mark that would has a lithium battery, and it lasts for only 3.5 years. But once that battery expires, if it bursts within the body, when lithium comes in contact with the blood, with your blood, it creates like a sore. It looks like a boil almost, and it'll burst. It's really bad and really painful. And so they what I'm pointing that out is that on verse 11, when it's talking about these pains and sores and whatnot, people will have read that, and then they will have listened to that fella talk about how he thinks he created the mark of the beast, and this is what it does, and it mirrors verse 11. That's how we know it hadn't happened yet, and it's coming. That's where they'll get that from. All I'm pointing that out with that is that some of you may know what I'm talking about. It's an old video. I didn't think about pulling it up, but prior to this, but all I'm saying is that some of you probably already know what video I'm talking about, and what that fellow was talking about, and how he's not, that's not verse 11. This already happens. We know that because it tells us repeatedly that these events have already either are happening or have already happened or are about to. But in here, we know that that's happened already because the beast was defeated. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. I think last year, and it may even be happening now, people are saying that the Euphrates is drying up, and so they're relating that to this verse right here, verse 12, and they're saying, oh, see, it's happening right now. This happened a long time ago, but it's not, it may be happening to that river over there, but I'm not even sure that river over there is the Euphrates that this is talking about. I think they just call that river the Euphrates. I don't think that this Euphrates in verse 11 is the same Euphrates that's dried up in the last year or so. But more importantly, let's say that that is it and that river is drying up. What kings in the east are they talking about? There aren't any kings in the world right now, so this wouldn't be today. So that's all I'm pointing out is that how some of these events that are happening today do similarly look like these events that they're talking about, and so people will latch onto it and say, "Oh, that's happening now," but that's because they don't understand the deception behind the false timeline within our history. And we're all victims of that. I don't think there's anyone going to ever watch this channel or this video and ever go, yep, nope, I've always known. No, we were all fooled. We've all been educated. I think that little tribe out there on that island that don't let nobody visit them, they're probably smarter than all of us with their lack of education, if I'm being honest. Um, but then it says in verse 13, and I saw three unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. All right, let's see. And I saw three unclean spirits like frogs. We're gonna pause it right there, and we'll pick up at on verse 13 in chapter what chapter we're chapter 16 verse 13. We'll pick back up with that when we come back with the next episode. I don't want to go over too far over this 2 hour limit. I know it gets really difficult for a lot of people to hang out and listen, due to time and stuff. You got other things to do. 2 hours is plenty, I feel like. And I don't necessarily want to do 2 hour podcasts, but I've chosen to do that with this Revelation series because there's so much information to go over. If we really went through this absolutely line by line, this would take way longer to go through than what we've been going through it. We're moving through it relatively quickly and doing pretty well with that, but that's because you guys that pay attention to this channel, pay attention to this chat, that are in chat, most of you are pretty familiar with all this anyways, but there are people that aren't. And so those that aren't familiar with this, if you've read chat and you have questions about anything anyone's saying, or if you've listened to me and you have questions about anything I'm saying, feel free to hop in chat and ask away. And if you can't, and if you don't feel like getting in chat, send it through the comments. And if that doesn't work for you, you can go to my homepage. I have links, and you just pick your poison. You can get in touch with me if you want to. Ask your questions. And if I'm wrong on any of the stuff that I'm going over, I want to be corrected. I don't want to be wrong. And I say that this way because I understand the consequences to teaching false doctrines. I may be teaching a false doctrine, but not because I'm doing it on purpose. It's not a willful thing that I'm doing. And I'm saying that because while there are thousands of pastors preaching false doctrines, we need to remain humble in it and understand that they're not all trying to do that on purpose. They're not preaching a false doctrine, all of them, with the purpose of deceiving people, because they are also deceived. And so we kind of have to understand that. And we have to keep that in mind when we come into contact or come into conversation pieces with these other people, or with people that do think like that and aren't aware of the things that you and I might be aware of. So that being said, guys, you guys have been awesome and amazing. I think I've done pretty well at keeping up with chat. And the next time we come back, hopefully I can pop it up on screen, and it'll make I think it'll make more sense to you guys as I respond to you. Um, I hope you guys have enjoyed this evening. I know it's Thursday and it's almost 10 o'clock, so the night's rolling on in, and I don't want to keep you guys up and too much longer. I know I need to be getting to bed pretty soon, and probably some of you need to be getting to bed pretty soon. And I know some of you are probably just starting your day, so it's different for all of us. Just like all of this that we've been reading is different. It doesn't all apply to us. Just like everything you got going doesn't apply to everyone else. But when it does, when things do affect all of us, then we know God is on the scene. God isn't going to just pick around and just randomly choose a place here and there and say, event happened, pause. Event over here happened, pause. Event over here. It's a worldwide thing, and we learn that through this series. You guys have been amazing and awesome. I look forward to catching up with you guys through the chat next time, and I will see you guys later. I love each and every one of you. Hope you have a blessed evening.